Everything seemed perfect, until Sophie, the maid, whispered, "Run now." Adam thought it was just another dinner with his fiancée and her family. But as he looked into Sophie's eyes, he realized this wasn't just a warning. This was a life-or-death decision. Subscribe now and hit the bell, because you won't want to miss how this unfolds. Let us know where you're watching from and drop a comment. What would you do if you were in Adam's shoes? With his world shattering, Adam doesn't know who he can trust. His fiancée, his business partners, someone in that house is planning to destroy everything he's built. But the real question is, can Adam escape in time, or will he lose everything, starting with his life? The guests continued their laughter, oblivious to the storm brewing in the next room. Adam stood frozen in the hallway, his mind racing. Sophie's words, "Run now," echoed in his head, each repetition growing louder, more urgent. The soft clinking of glasses and the murmur of polite conversation drifted toward him from the dining room. It was a night meant to celebrate, to mark the future he'd built with Lily. But now, all Adam could think about was Sophie's frightened face, the way her hands shook when she handed him that warning, and the sudden, suffocating weight of suspicion that hung in the air. His eyes darted toward the end of the hallway, where the door to his study stood ajar. In the corner of his mind, a fleeting thought lingered. What if there's something there? Something he hadn't seen before, something that would explain the tension he'd been feeling for weeks. But he couldn't leave the dinner, not yet. Lily would notice. Her parents, Frank and Victoria, would question his absence, and the evening's delicate dance of pleasantries would crumble. He forced himself to move, his feet heavy, as though the floor itself was pulling him back. He turned slowly, back toward the dining room, and as he did, his eyes caught Lily's. She smiled, but there was something off about it. The warmth in her eyes didn't quite reach her lips. It was as if she was playing a part, one he hadn't asked for, but had been forced to accept. A knot tightened in his chest, but he made his way back into the room, keeping his face carefully neutral. He greeted the table with forced cheer, trying to hide the churning unease inside. Lily looked up, the tiniest flicker of concern in her eyes. "Everything okay, darling?" she asked, her voice smooth, her hand reaching across the table to him. Adam nodded, but the lie stuck in his throat. At that moment, he noticed Frank's gaze, cold, calculating. Frank had always been a man who viewed the world through the lens of profit and loss, but tonight, there was something else in his eyes, something deeper, something more personal. The conversation flowed around him, but Adam's mind was elsewhere, lost in the sudden weight of the truth he was starting to unravel. He tried to focus on the laughter, the clinking of glasses, the sound of a distant piano playing softly in the background, but all of it felt hollow. And then, the light in the chandelier flickered. A subtle thing, hardly noticeable. But Adam noticed. The world around him seemed to slow, as if the evening was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. He turned to look at Lily again, but this time, her face was slightly turned away. She was speaking to Daniel, her best friend since childhood. There was a closeness there, an intimacy that felt too private for the dinner table. Adam's pulse quickened. Daniel's laugh was too loud, too forced. It grated against Adam's nerves. They'd always gotten along, hadn't they? But now, something about him seemed off, his presence in the room like a shadow that couldn't quite be ignored. And then, the whisper. It wasn't Sophie. It wasn't even from anyone at the table. It was the faintest sound, something almost imperceptible, but Adam caught it just as it brushed against his ear. "They know." His breath caught in his throat. He hadn't imagined it. Someone had whispered those words. Someone knew. Someone was watching. Adam glanced around, his gaze landing on Frank, who was now watching him with a keen, almost predatory interest. His heart raced, the pulse in his ears growing louder. He looked at Lily, at Daniel, at the dinner guests, and suddenly, it all felt like a trap, an intricate web designed to pull him in, piece by piece, until there was nothing left of the man he used to be. The smile on his face was no longer convincing. Lily leaned in closer, her hand resting on his, but Adam could barely feel it. Her touch was cold, like a warning he had missed too many times. The facade of the perfect evening began to crack, and in its place, something darker took root. Adam couldn't shake the weight of Sophie's whisper. "Run now." Her eyes had been wide with terror, a look he'd never seen from the quiet, reserved maid who always kept to herself. There had to be more to it. Something deeper than just a moment of panic. Something he wasn't seeing. The laughter around the table seemed muffled now, distant. He barely registered the conversation. Lily and her parents were discussing the upcoming gala, their voices a blur of pleasantries. Adam's mind, however, was elsewhere. His eyes flicked back to Sophie's empty spot in the hallway, then back to the room, as if hoping the answer would reveal itself. He fought to keep his expression neutral. The last thing he needed was for Lily to see that something was wrong. She wouldn't understand. She couldn't understand. The evening had been planned meticulously. Champagne, fine dining, and subtle glances to signal the life they'd soon share together. But now it all felt like a performance, a play where the lines were rehearsed and the script had been altered. As the minutes passed, Adam noticed subtle details. The way Frank's glass of wine was always refilled when no one was looking. The way Lily's smile never reached her eyes when she caught his gaze. Her laugh, once charming, now grating. It was as if she was the lead in a film Adam hadn't agreed to star in. But it was Daniel, Lily's best friend, his old business partner, who caught Adam's attention now. There was a slight shift in his posture, a tension that hadn't been there earlier. His eyes flickered to Lily, then to Adam, and something in his gaze made Adam's blood run cold. The distant hum of conversation continued around him, but Adam's world had narrowed to a single, sharp focus. Daniel. There was something about his casual demeanor that didn't sit right, as if he knew something Adam didn't. Lily turned to Adam, her voice smooth. Too smooth. "Are you all right? You've been so quiet tonight." Adam nodded, forcing a smile. "Just tired," he said, then immediately regretted it. He wasn't tired. He was suspicious. And he was beginning to realize that all of it, the perfect dinner, the laughter, the sparkling wine, had been a well-crafted illusion. The real danger had been hidden in plain sight. Suddenly, there was a sharp, jarring sound, the sound of a glass shattering on the floor. It was Sophie's voice, not loud but frantic, calling from the hallway. "Mr. Sullivan! Mr. Sullivan!" The panic in her voice cut through the noise of the dinner party. Everyone fell silent. All eyes turned to the doorway, where Sophie appeared, her face pale, her hair disheveled. She looked terrified, like she had just run a marathon. "Sophie?" Adam rose from his seat instinctively, his pulse racing. "What's going on?" Her eyes locked onto his with a look of desperation, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She stepped forward, but before she could speak, her gaze shifted to the dining room. Her hands trembled as she raised them, as if to plead for help. And then she froze, her eyes widening in horror. Adam's heart skipped a beat. Through the open door, Adam saw it. Frank. His gaze was cold, calculating. He'd been watching Sophie the entire time. There was something dangerous in his eyes, something Adam had failed to see earlier. Sophie looked back at him and mouthed, "Run, now." The words hit Adam like a cold slap. He couldn't move. His body was frozen, but his mind was racing. Sophie wasn't just scared for herself. She was terrified for him, for them all. The tension in the room rose like a tidal wave. The laughter, the idle chatter, the clinking of silverware, it all seemed to fade into the background. Frank, Daniel, Lily, they were all part of this web, and Sophie, the quiet maid, had somehow become the thread that threatened to unravel everything. Adam's instincts kicked in. This wasn't a mistake. Sophie had seen something, or worse, she knew something that could destroy them all. But as the words settled in his mind, a wave of realization hit him. Sophie wasn't just a maid. She wasn't just trying to protect herself. She was part of something bigger, something that had been happening right under his nose. She had seen the truth. Adam turned sharply to Lily, his face a mask of confusion and betrayal. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice low but demanding. Lily's face shifted. The warmth in her expression faltered. "Adam, you're scaring me," she said, trying to keep her composure. but Adam could see it now. The cracks in her facade, the nervousness in her voice. She was lying. He could feel the walls closing in. Just as Adam took a step forward, determined to confront Lily, the lights flickered again, this time more violently. And then, the unmistakable sound of a door slamming shut echoed through the mansion. Sophie had vanished. The lights flickered once more, then settled into a dim, eerie glow. The dinner party had come to a sudden halt. Every eye was on Adam as he stood frozen in the hallway, staring where Sophie had been just moments ago. The door to the study stood ajar, a subtle invitation, but Adam couldn't move toward it. Sophie had vanished into thin air, leaving nothing but the unease that now gripped him. His pulse pounded in his ears as the silence in the room stretched out, heavy and suffocating. Lily cleared her throat, breaking the stillness. "Adam," she said softly, but there was a hardness in her tone now. "What's going on? You're acting like you've seen a ghost." Adam's gaze flicked back to Lily, but the warmth in her eyes was gone. In its place was something colder, more calculating. No, it wasn't just her eyes. There was a shift in the entire room. It felt like the walls were closing in. He could feel the weight of it pressing against him, a pressure he couldn't explain. "Where is she?" Adam asked, his voice tight with suspicion. "What's happening, Lily?" Lily hesitated, then turned to face her parents. They both looked unnervingly calm, as if this was a scene they had rehearsed 1,000 times. Frank's face remained unreadable, a slight smile playing on his lips. Victoria, on the other hand, avoided Adam's gaze entirely, pretending to adjust her napkin as if nothing unusual had occurred. "Who, darling?" Lily said, her voice too sweet, too controlled. "Sophie? She must have just gone back to her duties. It's probably nothing to worry about." Adam's eyes narrowed. The way she spoke, it was all wrong. There was a coolness beneath her words that didn't match the anxiety she should have felt. She wasn't concerned at all. In fact, she was trying too hard to seem unconcerned. Adam took a step forward, his heart racing, and glanced at Frank. "I don't think this is nothing," he said. "Why don't you explain why Sophie—" "Enough, Adam," Frank interjected, his voice low and firm. "You're making a scene. There's no need for this kind of dramatics." Adam recoiled. The force in Frank's voice sent a chill down his spine. Frank had always been authoritative, but this was different. There was something in his voice that felt like a threat, something subtle but undeniable. And the worst part? Adam realized Frank wasn't trying to calm the situation. He was trying to control it. "I'm not going to let this go, Frank," Adam said, his voice sharp. "What is going on here?" Lily's hand found his, but there was no warmth in it. It felt cold, stiff, as if it had been rehearsed. She looked at him with wide eyes, but Adam saw through the act. He wasn't the fool he used to be. Not anymore. "Adam," she said, her tone shifting to one of forced sweetness. "You're making this too complicated. Everyone's here to celebrate tonight. Let's not ruin it with accusations." "Accusations?" Adam's voice dropped, his words heavy. "I'm not accusing anyone. I'm trying to understand why Sophie, someone who's worked in this house for months, just ran off in terror and then disappeared." Lily opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, there was a knock at the door. The interruption was so perfectly timed, it sent a shiver down Adam's spine. Victoria, quick to play the hostess, rose to her feet. "Oh, I'll get it," she said brightly, her movements exaggeratedly graceful as she walked toward the door. Adam caught her glance as she passed him. There was a glimmer of something unreadable, in her eyes, something that told him she knew more than she let on. When the door opened, Adam's breath caught. Standing in the doorway was Daniel, Lily's best friend, but this time he wasn't the charming, easygoing man Adam had once trusted. His face was ashen, his eyes wild with fear. In his hand was something Adam couldn't make out at first, but when Daniel lifted his hand slightly, Adam saw it clearly. A folder, a thick manila envelope, sealed tight with the letters "Restricted" stamped across it. Daniel stepped inside without a word, and the moment he did, Adam knew something was terribly wrong. "Where's Sophie?" Adam asked again. his voice low but demanding. Daniel didn't answer immediately. His gaze flickered from Adam to Lily and Frank, then back to Adam. It was a momentary slip, but it was enough. "We need to talk," Daniel said, his voice almost a whisper. "Not here." Adam's heart sank. Something inside him snapped. Without another word, he followed Daniel out into the hallway, his thoughts spinning with 100 questions. What had Sophie seen? What was so dangerous that she had to disappear, leaving behind nothing but silence? Daniel led him toward the back of the mansion, the hallway growing quieter as they moved away from the dinner party. The sound of the clinking glasses and idle chatter faded until there was only the pounding of Adam's heart and the heavy silence of the house. They stopped in front of a door Adam hadn't noticed before. It was locked. Daniel turned to him, his face grim. "You're not going to like what you hear," he said quietly, but his voice was thick with something Adam couldn't place. Guilt? Fear? Adam's fists clenched, his anger boiling over. "Tell me what's going on, Daniel. Now!" Daniel hesitated for a second longer, then sighed. "It's bigger than you think, Adam. Much bigger." Before Adam could react, Daniel turned the key and pushed the door open. The room was dimly lit, the shadows stretching across the floor. And then Adam saw it. A wall of screens, monitors, each showing a different camera feed, all across his estate. His heart dropped as he realized the full extent of what was happening. Someone had been watching him, watching them all. The room was colder than the rest of the house, its air thick with the smell of old electronics and something faintly metallic. Adam's mind raced as his eyes scanned the rows of screens, each one displaying different angles of his mansion. His dining room, the garden, his office, even the hallways he'd walked through earlier. His pulse quickened. The images were all too familiar. This was his home, his private sanctuary. And yet, someone had been watching him every step of the way. He turned to Daniel. His voice barely a whisper. "What is this?" Daniel stepped forward, the faint light from the monitors casting a shadow over his face. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by something else, something Adam couldn't quite place. "This is why Sophie ran," Daniel said, his tone low and serious. "She didn't just overhear things. She saw it." Adam's hands clenched into fists, his knuckles white. "Saw what? What the hell is going on here?" Daniel pointed to the screens. "These cameras have been in place for months, Adam. Frank put them here." He hesitated, then added, "All of us have been watched." Adam's stomach twisted. "Frank? My fiancée's father?" Daniel nodded. "Everyone here. Everyone involved in your life. Every conversation, every move. You thought you were in control, but Frank, he's been pulling the strings the whole time." The weight of Daniel's words hit Adam like a punch to the gut. He felt a rush of anger. Anger at himself for not seeing the truth sooner. Anger at Frank, and worse, anger at Lily. How deep does this go? He scanned the room again, his mind struggling to keep up with the revelations. The cameras. The monitors. Frank's cold, calculating eyes. Sophie's fear. It was all beginning to make sense, but the deeper Adam dug, the more dangerous the situation became. "Why didn't you tell me?" Adam demanded. "Why the hell didn't you warn me earlier?" Daniel looked away, guilt flashing across his face. "Because I didn't know who I could trust either. I've been stuck in this, just like you. But I'm done. I can't stay silent anymore." Adam's eyes narrowed. "So you expect me to just believe you now? You've been helping them, haven't you?" Daniel flinched, but quickly regained his composure. "I didn't have a choice. Frank had leverage over me, over all of us. But I swear, I'm not working with him anymore. I've seen enough." Adam felt a flicker of something like relief mixed with disbelief. Daniel had been a friend, a business partner. But this betrayal, it cut deeper than anything he could have imagined. "How do you know about Sophie?" Adam asked, his voice tense. "She was working for Frank in a way," Daniel replied, his eyes flickering toward the door. "She was supposed to keep tabs on you, feed Frank information. But when she saw how things were escalating, when she realized how far Frank was willing to go, she panicked." Adam's heart raced. "Escalating? What do you mean? What's Frank planning?" Daniel hesitated, then turned back to face Adam, his voice low. It's not just about you, Adam. It's not just about the company or the wealth. Frank wants control. He's been working with people outside the country, trying to manipulate your investments, leverage your business to gain access to bigger, global deals. And the truth is, he doesn't care about anyone else. Not you, not Lily. Adam's head spun. He had been so focused on the immediate betrayal, the personal hurt from Lily's involvement, that he hadn't realized the full scope of Frank's plan. Daniel continued, his voice more urgent now. And Lily, Adam, she's not just an innocent bystander. She's in on it. She's been helping him. Adam recoiled. No, she wouldn't. Lily has been working with Frank from the start. Daniel interrupted, his words quick, as if afraid Adam wouldn't believe him. She's been playing you, manipulating your every move. It's all part of the plan. They need you to sign the papers. They need you to sign everything over, Adam. Your company, your assets. It's all about control. Adam staggered back, his head reeling. This was a nightmare. How had he missed all of this? How had he been so blind to the people he trusted most? But there was something else, something nagging at the back of his mind, a question he hadn't asked yet. Why? Why would they do this? Why me? Adam asked, his voice hoarse. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, his gaze flicking to the screens, then back to Adam. It's not just about you. It's about power. Frank wants control, and you're just the stepping stone. But Lily is his key to everything. She was the one who got close to you. She's the one who secured your trust. Adam swallowed hard. I have to stop this. I can't let them get away with it. Daniel nodded, his face set with resolve. You're not alone in this anymore, Adam. But you have to be careful. Frank's people are everywhere, and they won't hesitate to destroy anyone who gets in their way. Adam's mind was racing, the walls of the room closing in on him. Sophie's disappearance, the hidden cameras, Lily's betrayal, Frank's manipulations. Everything was tied together now, a tangled web of lies and deceit. And in the center of it all, Adam had been the perfect pawn, but no more. He looked at Daniel. We're going to expose them. All of them. Daniel met his gaze, his voice steady. We're going to take them down. But just as Adam moved to step toward the door, the unmistakable sound of a phone vibrating cut through the silence. Adam's eyes flicked to the screen in front of him, where an incoming call flashed across one of the monitors. The name on the screen? Lily. And right below it, a message flashed. Meet me in the garden. It's time to end this. The phone vibrated again. Adam stared at the glowing screen in disbelief. The message was simple, but its implications were far from that. Meet me in the garden. It's time to end this. The words hit Adam like a hammer. He stood frozen for a moment, his thoughts spinning. What did Lily mean by this? Was she about to come clean? Or was this part of her final act of manipulation? He wasn't sure which was more terrifying. Daniel, still standing in the dimly lit room, glanced at Adam. What is it? It's from Lily, Adam replied, his voice tight. She wants me to meet her in the garden. Says it's time to end this. Daniel's face tightened. Don't go alone, Adam. This could be another trap. Frank has his people everywhere. You don't know what they've planned. But Adam's mind was already made up. He wasn't going to run anymore. Not from Frank. Not from Lily. Not from the truth. He had been manipulated, lied to, used as a pawn in a game he hadn't known he was playing. But that was going to change tonight. No, Adam said firmly. I'm going to end this, once and for all. Daniel hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. I'll come with you, but we need a plan. If Frank's involved, you'll need backup. Adam shook his head. I can't bring anyone else into this. I need to face her, and I need to know what's really been going on. This isn't about the company anymore. It's about everything we've built, everything she's taken from me. Daniel's eyes softened, but he didn't argue. Be careful, he said quietly, and whatever you do, don't trust her. With that, Adam turned and walked out of the room, his mind still a whirlwind of thoughts. He needed to get to the garden, confront Lily, and figure out where everything had gone so horribly wrong. The garden. The moon hung low over the mansion, casting a soft silver glow on the garden. The air was cool, almost too cool for the night, and the quiet hum of crickets filled the air. Adam's footsteps echoed through the stone path as he made his way toward the fountain in the center of the garden. It was a tranquil setting, almost serene, but the calmness was deceptive. Adam could feel the danger creeping closer with every step he took. When he reached the fountain, he saw her standing there, her back to him. Lily. She was dressed in a simple, elegant black dress, her hair flowing loosely down her back. She didn't turn around when she heard his footsteps. Adam stood still for a moment, watching her. This woman, the one he thought he knew, the woman he had planned a future with. She had betrayed him in ways that ran deeper than he could have ever imagined. Lily didn't speak at first. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Adam took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. Finally, she turned slowly, her face shadowed in the dim light. "You came," she said softly, almost as if surprised. Adam didn't respond immediately. His mind was racing with questions. Why? How? But he forced them all aside. There was no time for them now. He needed answers, and he needed them now. "I've been trying to understand why," Adam said, his voice calm but firm. "Why you lied to me. Why you dragged me into this mess. What's going on, Lily?" Lily's gaze flickered for a moment, and Adam could see the tiniest trace of guilt in her eyes. But then it was gone, replaced by the cold, calculated look he had seen before. She had a mask on, and she wasn't about to drop it. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice smooth, like she was rehearsing lines. "I never wanted to hurt you, Adam. You've always been so good, so trusting. You didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of all this." Adam's chest tightened. He took a step forward. "Caught in the middle? No. I was the target all along, wasn't I? Frank, he wanted my company. He wanted to control everything. But you were part of it from the beginning." Lily flinched, her hand instinctively reaching for the edge of the fountain. "I never wanted it to go this far. It was supposed to be just a few arrangements. But then I realized how much power Frank had, how much he could offer. I thought I could keep you safe, but I was wrong." "Safe?" Adam echoed, anger rising in his chest. "You've been lying to me for months, manipulating me for your own gain, and you think you were keeping me safe? You think this was about protecting me?" Lily's eyes flickered to the side, and Adam saw the tiniest crack in her facade. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she whispered, barely audible. "I never meant for you to get hurt." Adam took another step closer, his fists clenched. "You think I care about your excuses, Lily? After everything?" Her eyes darted to the ground, as if the weight of her guilt had finally hit her. She stepped back, away from him, her face a mask of confusion and desperation. "I didn't know how to stop. Frank's been too powerful, and you—" She stopped herself, her voice breaking. "I thought I could get out before it was too late." "You should have told me the truth," Adam said quietly. "We could have fought this together." But Lily didn't respond. She just stared at him, the coldness in her eyes slowly being replaced by something more vulnerable. For a brief moment, Adam thought he saw real regret. But it was fleeting, gone almost as soon as it appeared. "Why?" Adam whispered, the weight of everything crashing down on him. "Why did you have to drag me into this? Why did you let me believe in you?" "I never wanted to hurt you," she repeated, almost desperately. Adam's gaze hardened, his mind made up. "This has to end tonight, Lily. I'm not walking away from this. I'm not letting Frank destroy me, or my life, or my company. It ends now." Lily's eyes widened, her breath quickening. "What are you going to do?" Adam stepped back, his voice cold and resolute. "I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth. About you, about Frank, about all of it." Just as Adam turned to leave, A loud noise from the direction of the mansion interrupted them, the sound of tires screeching. Then, a voice, shouting, came from the front of the garden. "Adam!" Daniel's voice was frantic. "You need to come, now! It's not just Frank, it's everyone! They're coming for you!" Adam froze, his mind racing as he heard Daniel's frantic voice calling from the front of the garden. "They're coming for you." His pulse quickened, and his instincts kicked in. He turned back to Lily, but she wasn't looking at him anymore. Her gaze was fixed on the darkened path leading back to the mansion, and Adam could see the fear that had started to break through her composed exterior. "What do you mean they're coming?" Adam demanded, his voice rising. "Who's coming for me?" Lily opened her mouth to speak, but the sound of tires screeching on the gravel drive interrupted her. A flash of headlights illuminated the garden for a brief moment, casting long shadows across the stone path. Adam's breath caught in his throat. "They're here," she whispered, her voice tremulous. "They've been tracking you all along, Adam." "They know everything." Adam's mind flashed back to the hidden cameras, the surveillance footage Daniel had shown him. Frank's people had been watching him, manipulating his every move for months. But why? What did they want now? The sound of the car engines grew louder. Adam's muscles tensed, the fight-or-flight instinct taking over. He had to act fast. "What are you going to do?" Lily asked, her voice cracking. "I'm not running," Adam said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through him. "You should. Go back inside, lock the doors. I'll handle this." Lily hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. "Adam, please, you don't know what they'll do. Frank, he—" "I know what Frank is capable of. But this ends tonight," Adam interrupted, his voice like steel. He didn't have time for more excuses. He turned toward the mansion. Heading back up the stone steps, his mind working quickly, formulating a plan. As he approached the front door, he heard the sound of footsteps behind him. "Adam, wait!" Lily called from the garden, her voice filled with panic. He turned just in time to see her rushing toward him. "I'm sorry," she said breathlessly, her hands reaching for his. "I never wanted it to get this far. Please, don't do this. There's still time to fix this. We can go. We can leave all of this behind." Adam shook his head, the weight of her words heavy in the air. Could he trust her? Could she really be telling the truth now, or was this just another part of the game? A part of him wanted to believe her, but the other part, the part that had seen the hidden cameras, the lies, and the manipulations, told him otherwise. He backed away slowly, keeping his distance. "I don't know what you've gotten yourself into, Lily, but it's too late. I'm not running away from this, not anymore. You don't get to control me, or my life any longer." Lily stepped back, tears welling in her eyes, but Adam didn't allow himself to feel sympathy. He couldn't afford it anymore. There were bigger stakes now. He had to focus on what came next. Adam entered through the grand front doors, his footsteps echoing on the polished marble floor. His heart hammered in his chest, each second feeling like an eternity. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He didn't need to look at it to know who it was. Daniel. "Where are you?" the text read. "Get to the safe room. Now." Adam's stomach churned. The safe room. He'd completely forgotten about it. The hidden vault deep within the mansion. The one he'd only ever used for his most valuable documents and financial records. He hadn't even thought about it until now. The sound of the door slamming shut behind him made Adam's pulse race. Someone was here. Someone was already inside. The lights flickered briefly, casting long, unsettling shadows across the marble floors. Adam took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He couldn't waste any more time. He moved quickly, heading for the back of the mansion, toward the hidden staircase that led down to the vault. As he passed through the hallway, he heard voices. Laughter, muffled and distant, coming from the direction of the main living room. The very place he had spent so many nights with Lily, her family, thinking everything was normal, thinking he was safe. But now, everything was a lie. Just as he reached the door to the hidden staircase, the sound of a car door slamming outside reached his ears. Someone was in the driveway. His stomach tightened. Adam reached the bottom of the staircase and paused before the heavy steel door that led to the vault. He didn't want to open it, didn't want to face whatever was coming next, but he had no choice. He twisted the knob, the door creaking open with a low, heavy groan. Inside, the room was dimly lit, the shadows of filing cabinets and safe boxes standing like silent sentinels. The flickering lights above cast an eerie glow over the room. Adam moved quickly toward the far corner, where the emergency phones were kept. He needed to make a call. Someone had to know what was happening. But as he reached for the phone, he heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind him. "Adam!" came a low, cold voice from the darkness. Adam spun around, heart leaping into his throat. Standing in the doorway was Frank, his face illuminated by the faint glow of the emergency lights. He was dressed in a dark suit, his expression as unreadable as ever, but there was no mistaking the malice behind his eyes. "You think you can stop this?" Frank's voice was low, dripping with venom. "You think you can just walk away from this?" Adam's chest tightened. "It's over, Frank. I'm not going to let you do this anymore." Frank stepped closer, his eyes scanning Adam's face. "You've made a grave mistake. You don't understand what you're dealing with. This isn't just about you, Adam. It never was." The hairs on the back of Adam's neck stood up as Frank moved toward him, slowly, deliberately. "Everything you've built," Frank continued. "Everything you've worked for. It's mine now." Before Adam could respond, the faint sound of a door opening echoed through the room, followed by the unmistakable sound of heels clicking across the floor. Lily. Her figure appeared in the doorway, her face shadowed, but her eyes burning with a cold intensity. "We're done," she said, her voice low but filled with finality. Adam stood frozen, his eyes flickering between Frank and Lily. His heart was pounding, his chest tight with the realization that everything he had believed in, the love he'd shared with Lily, the trust he had placed in Frank, had been a lie. The world around him seemed to shift, blurring into something unrecognizable. Lily's voice cut through the silence, low and cold. "We're done, Adam," she repeated, her gaze unflinching. She wasn't the woman he thought he knew, the woman he thought he could trust. This was someone else, someone who had been playing him from the very beginning. "Lily." Adam's voice trembled, a mix of confusion and disbelief. "What are you saying? After everything? You're with him?" He gestured toward Frank, his voice shaking with a mix of anger and hurt. Lily didn't flinch. Her eyes remained hard, unyielding. "I didn't have a choice, Adam," she said, her tone resigned but direct. "You were never part of the plan. I've done what I had to do to survive, to secure my future." Adam felt the words like a punch to the gut. Survive? She had used him, manipulated him for her own gain. His entire life, the foundation of everything he had built, was a game to her. He shook his head. "You're just like him," Adam muttered, barely able to process the words. "You're just like Frank." Frank smirked, his cold eyes glinting with satisfaction. "You should have known, Adam. You should have seen the signs. But you were too busy enjoying your little empire to notice who was pulling the strings." Lily stepped closer, her heels clicking on the stone floor with every step. "I'm sorry, Adam," she said, her voice still calm, but there was no trace of regret in her eyes. "But I'm not going to let you destroy what I've worked for. Not now. Not ever." The room seemed to close in on Adam. The walls felt too tight, as though the weight of the betrayal was pressing against him from all sides. His head was spinning, the anger inside him threatening to break free. He looked at Lily one last time, his heart breaking. "You were the one person I thought I could trust," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "And now I see. You were just another part of the lie." Frank stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back, his demeanor calm and almost amused. "It's over, Adam. The game is finished. You've lost." Adam's eyes narrowed. He wasn't going down without a fight. They might think it was over, but he wasn't ready to give up just yet. "I'm not finished," Adam said through gritted teeth. Not by a long shot. Adam took a step back, his mind working at lightning speed. He couldn't let Frank and Lily control the narrative. He needed to think, to act, before they could execute whatever plan they had set in motion. His hand brushed against the emergency phone on the wall, just out of sight, hidden behind a thick layer of dust. His heart raced. He had one shot at this. Lily didn't notice at first. She was too focused on Frank, too certain that Adam was beaten. She was wrong. The last few weeks had been nothing but a slow awakening for Adam, a painful realization that the people he loved, the people he trusted, were his greatest enemies. But it was also a lesson in survival, and survival meant knowing when to strike back. Without warning, Adam lunged for the phone. "What the hell?" Frank started, but Adam was already pressing the emergency button, dialing for help. The voice on the other end was calm, soothing in its professionalism, but Adam could barely hear it over the rush of blood in his ears. "Please," Adam said, his voice tight with desperation. "Get someone here, quickly. There's a threat, Frank Caldwell. He's trying to take everything from me." Lily's face turned pale. She was quick to react, but Adam had already made the call. She turned to Frank, her eyes wild with panic. "What are we going to do?" she whispered. But Frank's gaze was unwavering, his confidence unshaken. "Stay calm," Frank said, his voice quiet but firm. "They'll be too late. We'll take care of this, just like we always do." As Adam pulled away from the phone, his thoughts raced. He could hear footsteps growing louder from the hallway, the sound of movement upstairs. His pulse quickened. "They're here," Frank muttered, a dangerous gleam in his eye. "It's too late for you, Adam. You should have walked away while you still could." But Adam didn't back down. He was ready. Just as Frank raised his hand to signal the others, the front door crashed open. Two figures stepped into the vault-like room, and for a second, Adam didn't recognize them. They were dressed in black, their faces hidden behind masks. But Adam's heart stopped when one of them spoke. "Step aside," the man said, his voice low, controlled. "We're here for him." Adam's breath caught in his throat as the masked figures stepped further into the room, their movements calculated and deliberate. The eerie silence that followed their entrance only amplified the danger they posed. The room seemed to shrink, the shadows on the walls growing darker, as if the very air itself was closing in around him. Frank's face remained impassive, but Adam could see the flicker of concern in his eyes. The arrival of these two figures wasn't part of the plan, at least not the plan Adam had understood. "Who the hell are you?" Adam demanded, his voice tight with anger and fear. His instincts screamed at him to move, but he knew he couldn't act recklessly. He needed to understand what was happening. The man in front of him didn't answer right away. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, as if sizing Adam up, before stepping closer. The figure was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a sleek black suit. His face was hidden behind a featureless mask, but Adam could sense the menace radiating from him. Frank remained calm, his hands behind his back, but Adam could feel the tension building in the room. "These men are here to make sure things go smoothly," Frank said, his tone as smooth as ever. "Don't worry, Adam. You won't have to do anything. They'll handle it." Adam's mind raced. Handle it? What the hell does that mean? Lily, who had been standing quietly by Frank's side, finally spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it felt like a betrayal. "You can't stop it, Adam. It's done. You need to accept that." "We did what we had to do." Adam's eyes burned with fury. "We did what? You've been lying to me from the start. You're no better than him." The words were on the tip of his tongue, but he swallowed them down. There was no time for accusations now. The masked man who had stepped forward tilted his head again, his cold, unblinking gaze locking onto Adam's. "You're not in control anymore," the figure said, his voice low and guttural. "This is bigger than you think. This is the end for you." Adam's heart pounded, but his mind sharpened. This is the end for me? He wasn't about to let them have the last word. Not like this. "What do you want?" Adam demanded, his voice steady but laced with tension. He needed to know their next move. The moment they made it clear, he could act. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into the inner pocket of his suit and pulled out a small envelope. He tossed it onto the floor in front of Adam. Adam's eyes narrowed. The envelope was thin, plain white, with no markings, nothing to indicate what it contained. But the way it was tossed onto the floor, it felt like a symbol of finality, like something was about to shift beyond his control. "Open it," Frank instructed from behind him, his voice cool and detached. Adam bent down, his mind racing as he picked up the envelope. His fingers trembled slightly, but he forced himself to open it. Inside, there was a single sheet of paper, simple but heavy with implications. He pulled it out, his eyes scanning the text. The letter was a legal document, something about the transfer of assets, of control over his company. But it wasn't just his company. There was a clause at the bottom of the page, one that Adam immediately recognized. It was a clause he had signed months ago, before the full extent of the deal had sunk in. He read the words again, slower this time. The truth hit him like a freight train. The document stated that if Adam were to ever attempt to fight Frank's control over the company, he would forfeit everything. His business, his assets, his financial future. Everything would be transferred to Frank. There was no escape, no way out. Adam's heart sank, his stomach twisting with dread. "This is a joke," Adam said, his voice hoarse. "This isn't legal. I never signed this. It's legal," Frank interjected smoothly, stepping closer. "You signed it, Adam. You just didn't read the fine print. You're not as clever as you think." Adam's chest tightened, his breath catching in his throat. This wasn't just a power play. This was a full-blown takeover, one that had been in motion for months. And Lily had been in on it from the start. He looked up at her, his voice shaky but firm. "You..." Lily's expression didn't change. "I had to, Adam. It wasn't just about us anymore. It was about everything. I couldn't let you get in the way." Frank smiled, watching the exchange with amusement. "You see, Adam, in the end, you were always just a stepping stone. You thought you were playing the game, but you were always the pawn." Before Adam could respond, the masked figure took a step forward, his hand resting on Adam's shoulder. "It's time to go," he said, his voice eerily calm. The words sent a chill down Adam's spine. The figure didn't wait for a response. He simply pulled Adam forward, toward the door, the force of his grip like iron. "You're coming with us," the masked man said, his voice void of emotion. Adam's mind was a blur. No, this can't be happening. But as he struggled, trying to break free, he realized there was nowhere to run. The walls were closing in, and for the first time, Adam truly understood the gravity of the situation. The grip on Adam's shoulder tightened, forcing him forward through the darkened halls of his mansion. The masked man's hand felt like iron against his flesh, cold and unyielding. Adam's heart hammered in his chest, each beat louder than the last as the reality of the situation set in. This is it, Adam thought, his mind racing. There's no way out. The masked figures led him through the winding corridors, their presence a constant weight on his back. The mansion, once a place of luxury and comfort, now felt like a prison. The air was thick with the stench of betrayal, suffocating him with each step. Lily's face lingered in his mind. He couldn't believe it. She had done this to him. The woman he had trusted, the woman he thought he loved, had been plotting against him all along. Frank, too, his so-called business partner. They had been working together, pulling strings from the shadows, manipulating him like a puppet. How had he not seen it? How had he been so blind? The masked figures didn't speak. They didn't need to. Adam could feel their intent in every movement, the purpose in their silence. They were taking him somewhere he didn't want to go, somewhere that would be the final step in their game. They reached the basement, a cold, sterile room tucked away in the deepest part of the mansion. The walls were lined with metal shelves, and the only source of light came from a single overhead bulb, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. The atmosphere was suffocating, oppressive, like a tomb. Adam's stomach turned. This was where they'd brought him, to finish what they'd started, He knew it. He could feel it in the air. They were going to break him here, just like they'd planned, but Adam wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. He made one last attempt, shifting his weight, trying to break free from the masked man's hold. "You won't get away with this," Adam spat, his voice hoarse but defiant. The masked man didn't respond. Instead, he shoved Adam roughly into the center of the room, his hands still firm on his shoulders. "Sit," the masked figure said, his voice low and emotionless. Adam didn't budge. He stood his ground, refusing to be subdued. But the cold metal of the room, the dark shadows that surrounded him, pressed in on him like a vice. "Sit," the figure repeated, more forcefully this time. Adam's legs were shaking, the weight of his exhaustion beginning to take its toll. He was surrounded, trapped with nowhere to go. But his mind, sharp as ever, refused to yield. "You don't have to do this," Adam said, his voice steady but low. "I can still help you. We can take Frank down together." The masked man's response was a cold, emotionless laugh. "It's too late for that. Frank doesn't want your help. He doesn't need you anymore." Adam's stomach dropped as the words sank in. They were already done with him. The other masked figure stepped forward, his hand gripping a folder, one that Adam hadn't noticed until now. The figure opened it slowly, drawing it out like a weapon. Adam's eyes widened as he saw the contents of the folder. Legal documents, financial reports, corporate contracts. "Everything you've built," the man said, "is already in Frank's hands. Your company, your empire. It's all part of the deal. You were always the pawn. And Frank? He's the king." Adam's chest tightened. The weight of the words hit him like a wave. His entire world, everything he had fought for, had been stolen from him. Frank had played him from the start. The empire Adam had built, the company he had poured his blood, sweat, and tears into. It was never his to begin with. It had been taken from him before he even knew it. But there was one thing Adam knew for sure. He wasn't done yet. He wasn't going down without a fight. The door to the basement opened with a creak, and Adam turned sharply, his gaze snapping to the figure that stepped into the room. It was Lily, but she wasn't the woman he had once loved. She was cold now, her face hard, her expression unreadable. She stepped into the room, her gaze flicking briefly to Adam before she looked away, almost as if she was afraid to meet his eyes. "Lily," Adam said, his voice rough. "Why? Why are you doing this?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked toward the table at the far end of the room, her movements stiff and deliberate. Adam's chest tightened as he watched her, but he couldn't help himself. He needed to know the truth. "Why did you betray me?" he asked again, his voice strained with emotion. "Why did you lie to me?" Lily paused for a moment, her back still turned to him. "I had no choice," she said softly, her voice barely audible. "Frank, he had leverage over me, over all of us, and I didn't know how to escape it. I never wanted it to end like this. I just wanted security." Adam's blood boiled. Security? Was that all it had been for her? Security? At the expense of everything he had trusted? "You could have come to me," Adam snapped, his voice shaking with fury. "You could have told me the truth, but instead, you lied to me. You let me believe that we had a future together." Lily finally turned to face him. Her eyes were wet with tears, but there was no sympathy in them, only cold resignation. "I couldn't, Adam. I was too far in. I thought I could keep you safe, but in the end it was always about Frank. He was too powerful, and I couldn't fight him anymore. I'm sorry." Adam stared at her for a long moment, his anger rising. But he had no time to dwell on her lies, no time to wallow in his heartbreak. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. He wasn't going to let Frank, or Lily, or anyone else take what was his. As Adam's mind raced, a loud crash echoed from the far corner of the room. Something, or someone, had entered through the back door. A figure stepped out of the shadows, their silhouette barely visible against the dim light. The figure was tall, wearing a dark suit, and their face was covered by a mask. And then, the most shocking thing of all, it was someone Adam knew. Adam, the figure said, pulling off their mask, revealing a face Adam never expected to see. The figure stepped forward, their footsteps slow and deliberate. Adam's heart skipped a beat as the person removed the mask, revealing a face that, at first, didn't seem real. No, it can't be. But there it was. Standing in front of him, looking as calm and composed as ever, was Ethan, his older brother. Adam blinked, his brain struggling to process what he was seeing. Ethan?